Okay. Thank you, Kelly, for meeting again today. I came in for that observation a couple weeks ago, and the observation went great. You did all these very wonderful things in your class. Looking at the lesson that you taught, you had student engagement. Students were working on detailed writing. You connected into a lot of standards. You went through time and committed time to scaffolding the project, to break that project down. Those are all great things that you did, all aligned with the Iowa Core. And so as this year has been going on, what is something you've observed about your students' ability so far this year?
I would say the thing that pops out the most is that they lack detail in their writing. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is that I would say their experience. They never have to go into a lot of detail with their writing, and that they can just do a quick sentence or two to explain. But I don't think they realize the depth that they could go or need to go in some situations.
Okay. When thinking about the purpose of this is to think about creating that SMART goal for your IPDP, or we call it the ICDP, and creating a SMART goal that goes along with some of that information. What is something you would like your students to be able to do? Based off of that idea, where do you want your students to go by the end of the year?
I would like them to obviously be able to put more detail in their writing, and maybe to just do that without a lot of stress and thought. I don't want to say thought because they have to think, but I want it to become just natural. I want it to become natural for them just to go, oh, I can write about these 3 or 4 things and have a detailed piece of writing when they're done.
Okay. So the idea of kind of just putting it more on less instruction on saying you need to do this, this, and this,
right.
And it just becomes a much more natural thing for them to learn and write better in that direction. Okay. Right. What might be an area of growth for you that would help make that those things happen for students? What can you do as far as lessons and things like that to help build that for students to do?
I'm reading a book right now called Why They Can't Write. And this book does kind of detail a lot of different procedures that you can go through to help the kids understand the whys behind the writing. For example, there was an excerpt from the book that talked about a person's keys. And just by looking at the keys, how much do you know about that person? And so it took them through the potential crime scene, and the keys were left. What can we find out about that person based on those keys? And so you have to look at the little fob that starts the car. Well, probably couldn't be a teenager, because in the class I asked yesterday, only 4 kids had cars that automatic start. So they get the car that's kind of crappy, and mom and dad get the nice car that starts automatically. So we deduced that, or we concluded that. We looked at the keys. Those must be office keys. Those must be shed door keys. So we assumed that this was the person who had a job. And through that excerpt that we looked in the book, it took them through things that they could do. Not necessarily questions that they could ask themselves, because then that gets too specific for the writing that they're doing. But let's observe. Okay, now let's think of our purpose. And now let's think of some other things that they can do to get more detail in their writing.
Okay.
So it's more of a mental thought process as they go through, rather than, oh, she told me I need to do my pre-writing and then I need to do this. So it was just a different way to look at the process of getting your ideas.
Okay. So have you finished that book? Are you
almost.
Okay.
Yep, I'm almost to the end. The end is just more strategies and things. I think there's an excerpt there on teachers and then students and something else. I don't remember what the last chapter was, but I got about 3 chapters left. So I'm a eager person when it comes to reading. People will tell me, why don't you read something fiction? Because I can get that off Netflix.
Right.
So I would rather sit down and read a book about teaching kids how to write or something like that. So that would be a way that I would probably go about finding out different strategies and ways to help the kids get better at their writing. So.
Okay. Thinking about this goal, I think it's a great ultimate goal is to try to figure out ways to get kids, more detailed into writing. That's something that's a lifelong skill for them to have. Thinking about that, in your mind, does that goal, does that align with our district's initiatives? Thinking about what our district's initiatives are, does that align with the Iowa Core? What do you think there?
I think so, because we always have reading and math, and one of the things that we've thrown in as well, especially with the English department, is the writing sector. We took the ACT practice exams for writing earlier in the year, and part of that was trying to see where we were at as far as writing goes. So I think that probably meets part of the initiative. Obviously with the 4 C's, communication is one of them. So having the kids write or have stronger writing skills when it comes to emails and different things that they may have to communicate out with other people. I think that's part of that initiative as well. And obviously, are we talking about Iowa Core yet?
It can be, yeah, absolutely.
I would just think that there are curriculum-based Iowa Core goals that we always want to try to look at. Where was it? I think the student achievement district goals, and then there's one about the curriculum.
Yeah, I think it's
this one. Yeah.
Yep.
Implement strategies.
Implement strategies and the implements towards district goals.
Right,
so
right.
yeah, I think thinking about the Iowa Teaching Standards, Iowa Core, our district initiative has been so much driven towards the innovative learning.
Right.
Looking at those 4 C's, the 4 shifts, and building on that, I think it hits it very right on the head with it. It definitely aligns very well with those things. I think it's a great way great process to go. So if you were looking at all these things you want to improve on, what would the one specific thing, if you were to narrow it down to kind of one very specific area, what would that probably be?
I would probably try to think about, as far as I'm concerned, not just assuming that they know how to do it, that I would probably need to model more of the process. And I think sometimes, and especially with all the snow days we've had, that we just kind of go through the motions, and here's our assignment, here you go. And that it takes more time for the kids to do that. I taught a lesson for a teacher yesterday on paraphrasing, and we went through 3 practices, and the one practice was as a group, the one practice was a partner, and then the last practice was on their own. And a lot of them really struggled with that on their own part. If I were in the classroom for a longer period of time, not just one day, I probably would have taken it slower. But I think it's the same practice, that you can't just assume that kids can put detail in just by telling them or showing them an example. You kind of have to model it for them and let them practice.
Absolutely. I think that comes back to the quote that I always hear you say, is that go slow to go fast. You slow down to really hamper on those things so that the kids then can take that and go fast once they've got those skills. So I think it's very good. So looking at what kind of what you've said so far, is we're looking at building a goal around the idea of getting kids to get more detail in their writing. Okay, and using different strategies. You talked about the book that you read and finding strategies there. I think that's a great option, and using other strategies that I know to do those things and continue building on those. So I think that's a great goal and a great thing to go through. And thinking about a SMART goal, I think we have a lot of those things. It's specific. I think it's measurable. I think it's attainable. All those things that go along with it. So let's think about that goal itself, and kind of build that SMART goal, and be specific on what those things are going to look like. So the specific, if we're going to say to make it very specific, what would that goal say?
I think I would use more modeling of my writing for the students to understand how to put more detail in their writing. Is that specific enough?
Okay. And probably want to say something, within that is, finding strategies. So, strategies.
Sure.
So measurable. So if we think about measurable, the idea behind that is, being specific to like how much, how many, to what degree. So how is it going to be measurable in that sense? What are we going to look at?
I would say that for me to actually model a piece of writing or to use a strategy, I would say once a week.
Okay.
Might be a good goal. I think if I tried any more than that, it would be difficult to make sure you get it in with all the other things that we're doing. So I would say once a week I could model a strategy for them to help improve their writing.
Okay. Thinking about this as far as attainable, thinking about, when we're talking about attainable, to think about it as identify the most important goals, then determine how to attain them, what to work to develop attitudes, abilities, skills. So how are you going, how is it attainable? What are, I'm trying to think how to explain, the clearly defined steps, things like that. And I kind of similar to the last one, measurable, but the attainability of this, I think it's very attainable. How are we going to maybe show that attainability? Are students going to necessarily turn specific things in?
I'm trying to think because I know that my next piece is going to be argumentative writing. So, yeah, I think I would probably do some type of formative piece where they turn something in. I know that there are probably 5 or 6 elements of argumentative writing that I would want them to try and to be able to do. So I'm hoping that maybe if we practiced it a couple times and I modeled it, then they would have maybe a pre-beginning before I whatever, and then maybe a post end of the week something.
Okay, so thinking like as far as maybe the rest of this year goes, you could say that maybe you would have the students doing, maybe a piece of this every week, every other week, or what do you think? Every week, is that attainable, or is it in every other week that the students would be, showcasing their progress?
I would want to say maybe every other week.
Okay.
Because as soon as I say every week, then it won't.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So
we want to make sure that it is something you can do.
Right.
We don't want it to be too easy.
Right.
We don't want to be too hard. Right. Something that is, in that area. So so student work about every other
2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
Every other week. Yeah. So like a pre-assess, post-assess, and the modeling strategy in the middle. And if we did that about every 2 weeks.
Raylene Williams-Peppy, please step in the office. Thank you.
Okay. The next one, the results or oriented relevant, is it what attainable number? I think, by the end of the year, is there like a specific number you want to have, 2 or 3 examples that showcase the students have achieved it? Because, ultimately you're probably going to have some weeks where the student maybe doesn't, master it. It's a struggle for them. They haven't quite got there. So by the end of the year, do you want to say, thinking about where we're at this year, by the end of the year, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 documented pieces that the students will turn in?
I have 2 things that I'm thinking about. One of them is that, again, I bring up the ACT assessment that we took. Was that before Christmas or right after? If we get the results back from that, I would like to do a similar type assessment at the end of the year to see the growth, and especially because this last quarter we're going to be working on argumentative writing, and that dealt with more argumentative writing.
Luke, please step in the office.
So I didn't do that as a measurable piece to see where they've grown from mid-year to end. I would like to go back and take one of the things that they wrote at the very beginning of the year and compare it to the end of the year and see where they've grown, and maybe have them do a little reflection as to where they were as a writer versus where they are right
Okay, no, that's a great idea. I think showcasing growth for
Right.
the students is,
Yeah.
I think, is something that is very impactful in their learning. So that's a very good idea. Okay, and then time bound. How long to achieve this goal? Is this I'm thinking about where we are in the school year right now?
Yeah.
You only have X amount of days left
Right.
with these students. Do you want them to kind of showcase this, sometime at the end of April, sometime right at the end of the year? What do you?
I would say beginning to middle of May would
Okay.
probably be a time where I would look to see where they're at. Obviously, I'm gonna, check things along the way. But yeah, I think that either that comparison piece or that reflection piece would probably be at the beginning of May to the middle of May.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very good spot. I mean, if
What is
we're-
that, about 12 weeks?
Yeah, that's probably, yeah. If it was, the 1st of September
Yeah,
right now,
we'd say, let's
maybe
check.
by Christmas.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
I mean, it makes sense to do it by the end of the year to showcase it. Thinking about that, I think the goal itself is very good. It shows all those specific things we can achieve. Through that process, what can I do to help you in this process? Thinking about, coming in to observe some of these things, what can I, do in that process to help? What do you think?
Well, I would say obviously, yes, coming in, announced and unannounced both to say, okay, so I've been in 3 times and I have seen you modeling lessons, that's great, or I've been in 3 times and I haven't seen you model anything, so are you doing that? Maybe just a midpoint check to say, how did it go?
Uh-huh.
How did it go? And then things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I would say I would like to come in and be able to, do some walkthroughs and see, am I seeing those things? And I'll try to do that probably every other week is to come in and check on those, and yeah, I might have even missed it. So if it's something like, oh, hey, here's a document, I did this today, you came in 5 minutes late, let me know. Yeah, I'll come in and we'll discuss this again.
Sure.
At the midpoint, sometime probably first part of April, we'll come in and have a little chat to see, how is it going?
Yep.
And then again, we'll discuss that at the end of the school year to kind of see, did we achieve it? What were the strengths, what weaknesses, what areas could we improve maybe on that goal or things like that. So I think that would be a good plan. Again, I think this goal lines up very well with the Iowa teaching standards. I have that highlighted sheet for you where I think that's probably going to be. It's attainable, it's specific. I think it's a good goal and something that I think will benefit a lot of kids. So
Good.
okay,
Good.
all right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.